thought maybe we could start with our two guests here explaining, tell me a little bit of both of you about your experience with DOE.
Yeah, so I've been sort of funded by DOE for a long time, and of course spend a lot of my time reviewing proposals for them as well as for the NSF. And in particular, actually, these early career awards. And in addition, I think at least on one occasion, I've done one of these, what are they called, the committee of visitors for the NSF, just to look through a whole bunch of proposals and how they do things. And so, yeah, so I do have quite a bit of experience on both as a reviewer as well as someone trying to get funding. And so I hope I can actually bring something of use to this panel.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, my experience is less so. As was mentioned in the introduction, I received a DOE Early Career Award, and this is in the High Energy Physics Directorate, or I guess we don't call them directorates, but whatever section, in 2018, and it's a 5-year award, so I'm still funded on it. I have not done any reviewing. I've been invited to do my first review for DOE actually this fall, or in the upcoming couple of weeks. It's for a comparative review renewal proposal for a group that works on Dune, I think, a neutrino experiment. So something a little bit outside of related to, but a little bit outside of my field. And on the other side, I haven't had direct experience with DOE, but I'm in the field of high energy physics, experimental high energy physics, same as Harrison, and we have a lot of big projects. So we're talking about multi-tens of millions of dollars, and DOE manages those projects also. And so I have some experience with their sort of project review process, which is really like a different thing than applying as a scientist trying to get funding for salaries, but a little bit of experience there.
I can think of a lot of questions I might have, but I really think it's important to give time to those who took time today. So I will jump in if people run out of questions, but I want to open it up for anybody that has a question to please speak up. I think it's small enough that we can go ahead and have a dialogue like that. So are there any questions that anyone has right away?
Hello, my name is Hoyoung Jung. I'm an assistant professor in chemical and biomedical engineering department. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, I have a question about, like, very general question about the relationship with program officers. So I'm familiar with NSF system, but DOE system is kind of new for me. I submit one proposal as a team, but that's only experience I have with DOE. So when I was doing that DOE proposal, the most difficult part was like detailed information. So I read DOE's FOA has like very lengthy, a lot of information in 50, 60 pages booklet, but I couldn't find any specific people's name to contact with. So it was impossible to get like detailed information, like compatibility of my work. And if I get rejection, then I want to talk about like more detailed statements about the reason of the rejection, something like that. But I couldn't find anything like that. So what's your suggestion when I deal with DOE proposals? So is this normal to all programs in DOE, or did I experience something very strange?
It seems a bit strange to me. I think it's actually very, very important to build a relationship with the program manager at a DOE. And so, for example, for particle physics, it's Avid Patwa, and not only by email, but literally be able to pick up the phone and call and talk with them. Mm. And so you should go to the Office of Science, and usually there is actually a list of these people with their emails and their phone numbers. So I'm a little surprised that you had difficulty finding the names, but they really do welcome actually communication. So for example, when I was in charge of the high energy group and in charge of the putting together the proposal, this is the thing I would do immediately. Whenever I had any difficulty, I would literally just send an email to, in this case, Abid Patwa, and ask, can I have a chat with you, and we decide upon a date or a time, and be on the phone and really ask him detailed questions. And I would keep on bugging him until I really understood what had to be done. So I think that is important. It's important to, and in fact, they ask you to do so, because often what happens is that we send in these proposals and then we basically forget about it. But I think that's a good thing to do. And their names should be available. In fact, they are available under the Office of Science webpage. Okay. Not only the emails, but also their phone numbers, and they're quite happy to talk with you.
Okay. Yeah, so I agree. You should be able to find the names. They might be buried, but you should be able to find them. Yeah.
The only thing I should say is that you should have very precise questions, right? Because they're busy people, and so often the sort of things I ask about are clarifications of something in the solicitation that's not completely clear, and that's important because you make one mistake, and of course, and your proposal could be put to the side. But they're usually very, very accommodating. In fact, they welcome this feedback.
So are they professional staffs or their rotation like NSF?
Both.
Both. Okay.
I mean, for example, yeah. I mean, the person with whom we interact used to be on the experiment I was on, but now he's a full-time person at the DOE.
So do you think, is it helpful if I talk to them in person after Corona?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I've had varying experiences with sending emails. Like I've sent Abid emails where it takes this particular program officer for us, where it takes a really long time to get a response, and it's kind of not so detailed or whatever, but then his deputy, you get a response in 5 minutes and it's tons of detail. Yeah. So there's also a little bit of variation on the particular person, but you'll never be punished for just politely just continuing to try.
Yeah, so that's right. I think it's important because if you do not get a reply immediately, it's not because they're not interested, but simply because they are, they have managed a lot on their plate. But I think you should keep trying, and it is better to speak with them if you really directly.
What made you decide to go for the program? Like, why did you decide to go when you went? Did you do it right away? Did you have grants already? Like, when did you know it was time to apply, that type of thing?
I did it right away. So I knew there are not many different agencies or avenues of funding in my particular field. In fact, Department of Energy is historically the largest and most consistent funder of our research, whether through the early career vehicle or otherwise. And so it was just sort of a known thing in my field. Oh, as soon as you get a faculty job, start applying for the DOE Early Career Award. You've got your 3 shots, you try. If you fail, you will end up applying to DOE again in some other form, like on a multi-PI grant. It's, even if you don't get it, it's good experience. So I believe I applied the first shot that I was eligible when I first arrived at FSU. I was rejected the first year and then just applied again the second year. I tried to take into account the reviews that I had gotten the first year and adjust the proposal as in a way that I thought would address some of those concerns. And then, managed to get it the next year. And so, unlike in maybe, I'm not sure where you guys are coming from, if you're chemistry or engineering or whatever, or even other areas of physics, my particular field is fairly limited in the avenues of funding. And so it was kind of a no-brainer.
Just to echo this, I think it's important to apply for these things. If for no other reason than to first of all go through the process of doing this, right, writing proposals, and getting feedback from the reviewers, because even if in the end you do not succeed in getting such a grant, the mere fact of having gone through this a couple of times will make it much easier to write a regular proposal to the DOE or the NSF. And so this has been a tradition in the group I was head of to strongly encourage our new people to apply for this. And so the other thing that I think is important, and this is true for anything, of course, that you apply for, is that it's actually very, very good and important to give your proposal to a senior colleague, just to read through it, not necessarily just for technical things, which of course that's also important, but just make sure that it reads in a way that's not going to annoy a reviewer. Right? Having been on the other side reviewing lots of proposals, we try to be, of course, fair, right? But we're also human, and the proposal that drives you to sleep or annoys you is not good, even if the ideas are good.
Harrison, what is something that would annoy you in a proposal?
Repetition, for example, lots of repetition, or lots of obvious typos, spelling mistakes, bad grammar. None of this is important to the idea, but it gives a sense that, well, this person didn't really spend time to read through this several times to make sure that it reads smoothly. Those things can just be a little irritating, at least for someone like myself. But lots of repetition. So when you read through the proposal, make every, if possible, right, make every paragraph count. I mean, I'm also guilty too sometimes writing proposals where I repeat things, but that can be irritating to a reviewer who may have to review many of these things, right?
I know this symposium, I would say, this meeting is for young investigator, but can I just ask them like the general things about DOE funding system?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, so yeah, what I applied for previously, that was just FOA based funding opportunity. So later on, they announced another opportunity, not FOA. This time they requested information for the another funding opportunity. So I forgot the exact terminology they use in DOE, but they were collecting informations about new field in specific area. So in this case, renewable material area. So in order to get like a high attention when I actually apply for their funding opportunity, do I need to join that kind of request of information section?
It's not that you should no, first of all, you're not obliged to, not at all. I mean, the review and so on is completely independent of that, which is done by your peers. But by engaging in these things, you get to be known by the program managers, right? And I think that's important, as I mentioned earlier. Building up a relationship with these colleagues at the DOE is important. And one way is that they notice, oh yeah, this, Ho Young Chung has actually given some interesting ideas and feedback. Because of course the reviewers themselves don't know this, right? They just look at the document and comment upon what you've written. But the program manager knows, and especially if later on you send an email to the program manager and they recognize your name, they might be inclined to respond more quickly.
Can I ask just one last thing? So it seems like
you can ask as many questions as you like. This is why we're here.
So, for example, like NSF, they have very well-designed centralized system to make good announcement, very efficient announcement for their new or existing funding opportunity. Does DOE have such a thing?
At least particle physics, we get emails, that actually announce when these solicitations come out. And also every year there are these so-called PI meetings where, we can actually, where the program managers show up, at least in particle physics, and there you can actually ask questions directly of them. In fact, as I just a couple of hours ago, both the Sol Gonzalez from the NSF in particle physics and Avid Patwa, we invited them to our collaboration meeting of the USCMS, and they showed up and we asked lots of questions. In principle, yes, they have a very well-defined way of sending out these solicitations, But I think the key is, as always, is to, if you can get in touch with the person who is in charge of managing your field, that's always helpful, because then you can always ask, by the way, are there any plans to have announcement, in this topic? And that is, that's also very useful. So today, for example, I learned from both the NSF program manager as well as the DOE that we should look out for soon for some announcements that might be of interest to us.
I would actually slightly disagree with you, Harrison, because those emails to the PIs are to already funded DOE PIs. So I think if you're new and you haven't been funded yet, I do find DOE a little harder to get the foot in the door. I think you and I have a good connection because we're part of these we're part of a scientific field that grew up with the DOE, if you will. So we get our news from other sources. But yeah, Ho-Young, I think unfortunately I remember this when I was first applying for the DOE Early Career Award. Like, you really just had to keep checking their website over and over and like reloading it and waiting for these announcements. There wasn't like a great mailing list type setup. Maybe that has changed. In the 2 years or whatever, maybe it's 4 years since then. But I haven't seen it that way. And
yeah, so here's an obvious thing that you could, once you get in touch with your with a program manager, is to make that known to them, that it would be helpful to have a way to be informed when these things come out. But so Rachel's point is well taken, that one of the advantages about being, or disadvantages about being, an old fogey, is that I've grown up with a certain way of, it just seems to be normal. I get these solicitations, but then that's because I've been around for a long time.
And one nice thing is that I have, it seems like the Office of Proposal Development definitely keeps tabs on these things and tries to email the relevant people who could be interested. Beth is probably hearing what we're saying, but like, yeah, if you can like distribute this stuff to the new PIs or people who might be interested. And I know you guys do a great job trying to get all the department chairs to distribute every single announcement. But yeah, I do find sometimes you have to have these like insider channels a little bit, which maybe just has to do with the kind of, DOE, I mean, even though it's like $1 billion in the Office of Science, it's still like dwarfed by like their job as, safeguarding the nation's nuclear stockpile, so like unlike NSF, which is very much a PI facing scientific research organization. So maybe it's the culture, I don't know.
Yeah, okay, that's good. So actually I registered a couple of mailing lists from DOE, but it wasn't really helpful. They just give me an announcement like when they update their website, something like that.
Right. Yeah,
I'm
it's
interested in their funding opportunity, but they send me like something strange information. It wasn't really helpful. Beth, do you have any addition? Do you know any kind of like useful source to get funding opportunities from DOE?
Well, there's a couple things I was thinking about as you have been talking about it. One is grants.gov. You can set up alerts, and also Pivot, you can set up alerts. So I'm wondering if we can't get you set up, and anybody we can work with to set up some alerts. So when DOE comes up with something, you get notified. And I don't know, a lot of agencies have alerts themselves, but I don't know that DOE does. But through these other means, like for me, I get from grants.gov basically everything every day, and I go through it and try to look through. You can miss them occasionally, but I think we could look about getting, I'll catch up with you after this, Ho-Young. I'll send you something. Actually, I've been taking notes so I can send information to all of you, but yeah, we'll try to find some ways to get around how they do things so we can get things sent to you directly.
Thank you. Yeah, NIH has perfect system, and NSF also have very easy system to register their mailing list. But DOE is kind of, they're very large. It's not easy. Maybe only for me. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I agree. Actually, I did a pre-application. This is like the first year and then third year, because second time I missed. I received the emails, but like too many emails, and each email has too many information. Obviously, I ignore. And then the timing of the pre-application was changed from the first time. I was preparing and just without checking, I was assuming the same season, but it shifted earlier by a few months. And then like I got from my colleague that he was preparing for after the pre-application. So, oh, so pre-application is done. Yeah, something like that. So
Sorry.
yeah, it happens. So Harrison, I have a question as a panelist experience. So I have actually two questions. So one is actually a detailed question. How much the non-research component is important? For example, like giving a colloquium, organizing conferences, and like to me, it's like a not directly related to research. Of course, it's a part of education, research related, but not like research output. Do people actually care these things?
So no, to put it straight to the point. No, I mean the reviewers. My experience is the reviewers really care mostly about the research, the science. Of course, you know, if in your bio you should sort of make it clear that you have given talks at various places and so on. That's fine, but really my experience is that that is what people focus on. Certainly that's what I focus on, is the research. You know, is the are there ideas in the proposal? So for example, let's say you brag about being in charge of something in some big collaboration, what have you. Well, often we don't care about that, because just the fact that you're in charge, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're the intellectual driver. And so what really we look, most reviewers look for is there something interesting that's potentially new, and is there going to be an impact? And all the other things are far less important. The NSF, of course, the broader impacts and the education is very important. And of course, we do look at that. That's one of the guidelines that we're given as reviewers. But the one thing I should warn you is that there's a very broad response that one gets from reviewers about that particular aspect of the proposal. I, for example, typically, even though the NSF would say, well, this has to be novel, I tend to look to see whether the proposed education thing is doable, and whether it has any chance of actually achieving some concrete goal, like actually, right? And so it varies a lot. But the main thing people focus on, the truth of the matter is the research, and whether or not there is a new idea, and whether that idea has some chance of actually succeeding.
Okay, thanks. So one more question. So when I actually applied for the first time, I checked like a past awardees, like let's say maybe 10 years. And I do see that the kind of a short-term trend. So for example, like 10 years ago, it's more LHC related stuff, but much less in the recent. I don't think the scientific value doesn't change much even compared to the 10 years ago, but I do see some trend. I see more trend to neutrinos. So do you think it's intentionally happening, or it's just a consequence of the bias of the panelists or reviewers?
I don't think there's a trend. I think it's really, I mean, the thing you have to understand is that every year there's a different set of reviewers. I see this as a trend, right? If you still have interesting things that you think you can do at the LHC, for example, then that's what you should actually write a proposal about. I think one should be very careful to avoid, the bandwagon effect, where you see a whole bunch of things being proposed and maybe even being accepted, right? Being successful, and then you think, oh, well, this is what I should do. I think one should be careful about doing that.
That all being said, I think it's very important with DOE, less so than it sounded like NASA, but still more so than NSF. DOE has mission items, right? They have things they care about that they've outlined. They're not hiding them, you know, things that they care about in their different sections. And so if you can, on the positive side, show that your research is aligned with something they have explicitly said they care about, that's good. The converse of that, right? If your research is not something they support, I probably wouldn't propose it, even if it is a good idea.
Yeah, yeah. It's a difficult balance, right? Because if you're young, you know, for young people, you're looking for evidence of creativity and new ideas, right? And by definition, if you're pushing the frontier, your new idea might not pan out because it's you know, it's novel, it's interesting, and so on. And so that is something the reviewers look for. But Rachel is also quite correct that you have to balance that with wanting to do something that the DOE actually cares about. And so it is a difficult balance. There's no question about it. As someone said, actually, just today, in our discussion with both the NSF and DOE program managers, for something like the LHC, where the upgrade of the experiment is set, more or less, you actually do not want novelty at this stage, right? You just want people to continue and build stuff and get it working. And yet at the same time, if you're a young person, you know, doing something that's new is also important. And this is why I think it's good to, when you write a proposal, to pass it around a few people to get a sense of whether the balance is right.
Rachel, do you see a difference in or what are the differences in the early career proposal and a regular DOE proposal?
So let me start that off by saying I have not made a regular proposal, but I can tell you what I have heard from being adjacent to my colleagues who have. First of all, the amounts of money and how the proposal is to be structured are very different. A regular proposal could have multiple PIs. There are very specific rules about, you know, how many pages per PI, exactly how you want to structure it. Here, you know, it's one person, you're telling a story. I guess because it's an early career thing, the timelines are also different. I believe the regular proposals are maybe a max of 3 years, and the early career is 5 years. So they're asking you to think a little bit further out. In terms of the amount of funding you should be thinking about, probably not too different in terms of like on a per year, per PI basis, I would think, not too different. I think with the early, I have to imagine this is the same for all proposals, but kind of the advice I got is, you know, why you, why this, why now? Like why, you know, and I know Harrison said good thing he didn't read mine, because I do like to repeat like those 3 things I try to emphasize over and over. Why you, why this, why now? And maybe for an early career where you mentioned before, they're thinking about, it's almost like a little bit of an investment in a specific person, that like maybe even that is more important. So to really try to sell yourself as the correct person to be doing this research at this time. And so, yeah, the time profile is probably important in all proposals, but I guess when you're doing this 5-year thing, it's certainly important for the early career. That's the best I got, having not written a standard DOE proposal.
Yeah, so actually, I did read your proposal, but I think that's right. Is that one of the big differences, as Rachel pointed out, is that in the career proposals, you have to somehow convince the reviewer that you are the right, you know, you are the right person to do this. And so in some sense, you need to basically have a way to establish your credentials. So if you've already done something that is germane to the proposal that you are writing, you should really talk about that, right? So that the reviewer sees that, yep, you know, you've already established you have some kind of established, you know, track record in this particular area, and therefore you can make the case that you are in fact the right person to go to the next step. The other thing that's important is that the DOE and NSF want to see whether, if they invest in this young person, is there a horizon beyond the 5 years that is evident from the work that's proposed? That is, what they don't want to see happen is that you do this work for 5 years and basically stops, and nothing further comes beyond that. And so that's very important. So somehow you've got to convey that that this 5 years is just kind of the yes, you want to do great things during that 5 years, but it's really the foundation for a much longer term scientific program.
That sounds a lot like the NSF career as well.
Yeah.
Harrison and Rachel, are there any specific pieces of advice you would want these folks to walk away with that maybe we haven't mentioned?
You have access to proposals that have been successful, both career proposals as well as regular proposals. I strongly urge you to read a bunch of these to get a sense of the quality that you should be aiming for. That's just very important. The other thing is, again, to try as hard as you can to get in touch with your program manager, right? That is important. And secondly, the third thing, which is already talked about, is absolutely try to get others within your group to read your proposal and read it critically, right? To really go through it and ask questions as if they would be the reviewer of your proposal. Those three things are really very important.
And I would say that you should write a realistic, so I'll focus here on the early careers, but I think it probably goes for all of them. Be realistic. Some people hear novelty, or they see the word novel and think they have to come up with like the world's most exciting idea that no one is. Novel just means like you're not doing the same thing you did as a postdoc. It doesn't mean, you know, something that is reasonably interesting that could be publishable and that you can argue can advance your field. It doesn't mean you're the next Einstein. And similarly, don't overpromise. The reviewers know that you're only one human, and they know how much money you're asking for, and they know how much that can support. And so they know how much you can realistically do. If you say you're going to do 17 things, they're going to reject your proposal as unrealistic. I mean, I think one of the DOE criteria is this doable, you know, in so many words. So it's a balance between choosing a research path that is, you know, probably builds on expertise you already have, but doesn't copy it slavishly. Challenges you maybe a little bit, but not to the point where someone would be convinced that you couldn't possibly deliver on what you're promising. So it's not just novelty, but also like how much you can convince them that you can do the job with the resources that you are asking for. And I guess that is one of the great reasons to have someone read it, because somebody else can probably see that more easily than you can. Especially, I would think, especially someone more experienced, maybe a PI, somebody that's already an associate professor or beyond, who's actually led a research group for a little while and kind of knows what you can do. Yeah, I don't know. The grant that I got, like one of the things that the deputy program manager told me was like the most exciting about it is the thing I thought was the least exciting. Like I thought it was totally technical and boring and just a problem that had to be solved. And he was like, no, we found this very interesting because it's, you know, so you just never know. And so I found that novelty, at least in my case, was less prized than just like having a coherent whole of like, this is something someone could actually do and do it reasonably well.
I have a question about, you know, the comparison between NSF and DOE. So in NSF, there's 2 merit criteria, intellectual merit and broader impacts. In DOE, is there some similar merit criteria?
It's essentially only the intellectual merit. There is no
Yeah.
broader impact, at least for the early career, unless it's changed in the last
No, it hasn't changed.
years.
No, I mean, the DOE just wants to know what is the scientific impact, what would be the scientific impact of what you're proposing. But the NSF, both criteria are very important. And even if, you know, a reviewer may not take, for example, the broader impact seriously, I assure you the NSF program manager does. And so you should not shortchange that.
Thank you.
I would just like to thank Harrison Prosper and Rachel Yohay for taking their time today and letting us pick their brains about this program and about DOE. Thank you again, and I hope you have a wonderful weekend.